Hi, I'm Brittany, and a TBI survivor and a member of Bind.
And hi, I'm Carrie, a stroke survivor and a member of Bind as well. And today we'd like to welcome Labor of Love's founder, Jeff Gould. He's a seasoned interventionist with the field of behavioral health with hundreds of successful interventions to his credit. I hate that I read all those, but can't memorize that, sorry. And Jeff is also a survivor as well. So welcome, Jeff.
Hey, welcome. It's good to be here, and it's nice to be with the listener today. Yeah.
Welcome to Bindwaves, the official podcast of the Brain Injury Network of Dallas. I'm Brian White, Bind's Executive Director. On each episode, we'll be providing insight into the brain injury community. We'll be talking to members and professionals regarding their stories and the important role of Bind's Clubhouse. We work as a team to inspire hope, community, and a sense of purpose to survivors, caregivers, and the public. Thank you for tuning into Bindwaves. Let's get on with the show.
Great. Well, that's awesome. I guess just to kind of get us started, let's start with a little bit about you and what kind of brain injury you had and how that started off for you. How you're part of our wonderful club.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of my life's passion and work has been what I would call undetected brain injury. And so when I was 13, I was hit in the head with a falling door that hadn't been on the hinges. A therapist told me, she said, it's interesting that it was a door, if you've never seen the symbology in that. But I was kind of laying on the floor reading a comic book, and I heard like a whoosh of air. And as I turned up to look, the corner of that falling door hit me right in the jaw. I think it knocked, it folded the shape of my jaw. It ripped about half my lip off. It knocked about 10 of my teeth out. And so it was immediate, my friend's family, we were just kids playing, but they had the wherewithal to put the teeth in a jar of water. They knew you could put them back because they came out roots and all. And I was rushed to the hospital for what would have been an immediate kind of maxillofacial surgery, emergency surgery. But back then, they gave me a CAT scan, and the only criteria they were looking for is, have you had a stroke? Is there a vascular bleed in your brain? And there wasn't. Or is your skull cracked? And it's really hard to crack a skull. And so, several dentists and orthodontists and all that later, they sent me home with a clean bill of health telling me you don't even have a concussion. And my personality changed. That was the beginning of a lifetime's worth of having trouble conceptualizing things, brain fog, memory loss, highly dysregulated emotional nature, outbursts of anger, and things like that would really last for decades. So,
Yeah. So it was kind of like undetected, kind of neglected. So that's kind of like my situation. Mine was kind of neglected, where I actually went to a neurologist and they just told me to turn off the lights and go home. And so I did. And that happened about 3 times before they got like really scared. It's like, oh no, you don't know your name or anything, so you might have a brain bleed. Then they like kind of start paying attention to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did they actually figure out that it was more than just a facial thing and that there was actually something going on with your brain?
Well, they never did figure it out. I did. I rubbed shoulders with a lot of people in the brain injury community. There was someone that gave me a complimentary brain scan here in the Metroplex called the Amen Clinic. They have one of their franchises is here. And they came back and they said, you are TBI all day long.
Wow.
Every feature of your brain, it's got on a scan, it's got a hammerhead, a very flat look in the front. It showed tons of left temporal damage. It shows tons of prefrontal cortex. You could see the brain's organizing manager on the scan struggling to keep up, which has always been a problem for me. Again, keep in mind, I tried to live my life undiagnosed. And I remember being on a cook's line, and it's like liver with onions, liver with no onions, liver with extra tomatoes, and I was like, I can't do this. Like I don't, And then there's 10 more tickets, and I always knew. So my dad was a nuclear weapons expert. My oldest sister had 3 PhDs, mostly in dinosaur bones and botany and stuff. and I always knew I was came from good stock, you could say, and I had intelligence, but I had no way to access that when I needed it, and I did not know why. So
interesting. So that journey has led you to what I guess led us to find you. And so we're going to kind of start with, I understand that you're a traumatic brain injury coach. So what is that, and how did you get there, and why? I mean, I guess we kind of know the why, but...
Well, and how I got there, my work has been in behavioral health for 20 years. By that, I mean, it's mental illness and substance abuse. I'm also, for the listener, I'm a recovering alcoholic 22 years later. But so I've worked in that field with addiction and mental illness for 20 years. And I kept seeing, even now, all these years later, what happened to me happens to people all the time. Nobody's asking the right questions. There's no diagnostic instruments that are put to use in our field to ask people, have you fallen off a ladder or anything like that? So, and then even, well, again, and I'm speaking specifically to the field I'm in, even when it's recognized, in the field that I find my work from, they treat it as a mental illness and not as a mental injury. And so oftentimes they're like, oh, what you need is an antidepressant. It is depressing when your life goes belly up and you can't function, but that's not what you're suffering from. You're suffering from a brain injury. And so it was like, how do I take everything I've learned about integrative medicine, about ocular motor dysfunction, which for the listener has to do with the eye, CCRV and vestibular has to do with what happens in the inner ear when you get your head hit, and just a number of different things I've learned from being in communities of hockey players and football players, and learned how to build a treatment plan, you could say, utilizing lots and lots and lots of different methodologies, but tailored. One of the things I'm big on, if you know what the parts of the brain do, your parietals, your occipital, it's a bit of a roadmap. And if you ask enough questions to someone, I can almost tell you where there's still neuroinflammation, where there's broken axons and dendrites. And for the listener, that's the neural network, your connective tissue that helps you send and receive thoughts to yourself and sort problems. But a lot of times after doing this for years, I don't know as much as a neurologist does technically, but I do know how the brain works, and I know what's going on when it's failing to function as it should. So, yeah.
So is that the reason why you actually started to be a TBI coach?
It is, and I found the thing, I do have a clinical license, and this will, I think, make sense to you. But when I say it out loud, you'll be, of course, you know what, if you were to go to your doctor and say, hey, I've been having chest pain ever since I got a divorce, your doctor's never going to say, you know, I'm going through a divorce too. And because medically and clinically, it's not ethical for self-disclosure. It's called client-patient-focused care. Having said that, when we're talking about brain injury people, that nobody understands how I feel. Nobody knows what I'm going through. As a coach, I can be like, I know exactly what you're going through. Everything I would ever recommend that you do is something I've done myself to my benefit. And it's a deeper understanding that we're just walking shoulder to shoulder, two people on the same path. The difference being I might perhaps be further down the path than other people are, right? I've done a lot to heal my brain in the last 5 years. I've changed the way I eat. I've looked for lots of integrative medicine. I've improved my cognitive ceiling. Like I don't have a percentage, but I know I've improved it. My main high-risk category for the listener, Alzheimer's took my mom, and Alzheimer's took her mom. And by the time I was 45, so not only was it common to forget where I parked my car, that's the easy part, but I can remember a lot of times I didn't remember what I was driving. Am I driving my wife's car, the work car, my car? And I didn't have the wither to like, why don't you look at your car key and find out? I mean, that'll tell you if you're driving the Nissan, but it just didn't occur to me. And I started getting, by the time I was 45, I was scared. Like, I'm going to lose my mind, but young, like my mom did. And that was really scary to me. And that's when I began to read and study how can I preserve what I have or reverse some of the damage that has been done? So
I love that. I love what you're saying, because that is one of the big things that we say here in the clubhouse, and that we say when we go out to talk to new survivors, is nobody gets a brain injured like another brain injured. When your therapists are there, they get it. They get what the books say. They get what they're told to do to make your brain better, and they can empathize, but they don't understand. I mean, maybe you can't remember what car you drove. Maybe we sitting around talking and you tell me and I'm like, well, did you look at your car keys? Ding, ding, ding. So yeah, it makes sense that we can all help each other. And I like that you've taken it to a totally different level.
And I want to say there's a stigma around this. It's unseen and unrecognized. But as an example, if you're in a grocery store and you see someone with a hat that with their Army medal on it that says Vietnam veteran, and you notice you have one leg, just notice that there's going to be a birth of people that kind of nod your head like, thank you for your service. You gave your leg in service to this country. But if you were to see one of us three staring at a box of Cheerios for 4 minutes, like, where did you go? Everyone's going to think like you're weird, you're crazy, right? Or something's wrong with you. And so it's this kind of unseen epidemic that by its nature leads to misunderstanding. And, I've had numerous people like me go to a medically trained doctor 3 years later, and the doctor's just like, it's all in your head. We don't know what's wrong with you. It's all in your head. We don't know why you can't get off the couch or why you're not motivated. It looks like a brain injury undetected. Again, that's my passion. Looks like so many other things, but it doesn't respond to those other pharmacological interventions at all. So,
That's right. And so the TBI coaching and just your general passion has led to this Labor of Love organization. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, are they hand in hand or are they not?
It is. So I do. Here's what I do, and this is with my own private LLC. I work with drug and alcohol and high mental health acuity, helping people find hospitalization, but as a coaching sort of case management. And by that I mean get really involved in someone's life, talk with them 2 or 3 days a week on 3-month-long contracts. That's my website is tbicoaches.com. And sometimes when people need either assistance, they don't know what help to ask for and or where to find it, what I do is help them, bring them in and create a treatment plan where here's 5 or 6 things you can do at home. Here's 5 or 6 nutraceuticals, whether it's a GABA, whether it's a bioavailable copper, that are going to boost your brain efficiency. And here's some professionals you may want to seek out, whether it's a neurooptometrist, whether it's a neurochiropractor, whether it's hyperbaric oxygen, which I am a big fan of hyperbaric oxygen and neurofeedback. So I'll help people put together a treatment plan. I'll assist them in utilizing that treatment plan, and I'm kind of the cheerleader and the motivator on the sideline, and help them integrate things into their life to promote their own healing. That's a good way to say that. So.
Okay.
So you help with substance abuse, I heard. And so how do you think substance abuse and brain injury go hand in hand?
I would say for many, many people, an undiagnosed concussion is going to lead to, what you call self-medicate when your life's falling apart. A lot of people, it's just a natural curve into drinking, into problematic drinking. And I know as people that work in this clubhouse, this pouring alcohol on a brain injury is the absolute worst thing you can do. Even if you think it's making you feel better, biologically, it's just horrible for you. So they do inform each other. And then I also want to say this, as someone that's worked exclusively with substance abuse and alcoholism, for the real alcoholic, you hit your head a lot. You crash a lot of cars, you fall down in the kitchen after too many beers, you fall down by the pool after too many beers, and and one of the things, when I'll just use the word inebriate, it was like you probably didn't even notice that your pathology in your brain changed because you were partying when it happened. And years later, it's like, why can I not concentrate on my Zoom calls or whatever people have going on in their work? And they sort of notice the deficiency, but they're unable to connect the dots to like, hey, this happened when I fell by the pool. So one of the things I'm big on in my practice, a lot of people don't know they've had a TBI, and we'll just call it a TBI. Concussion seems to be like TBI light, and there's no such thing. There's no 3 months pregnant and 9 months pregnant. Pregnant is pregnant. You're pregnant, right? And TBI is TBI. You're not functioning with the same bandwidth. And so one of the things I found, and I got this from Daniel Amen, you can ask people 10 times, have you had a TBI? No. Have you had a TBI? No. Because their thinking went through the windshield of a car. But I actually changed my diagnostic criteria. Rather than assuming they know how to file that question, I'll ask them, what's the hardest you've ever hit your head? And then they'll be like, well, I fell off a bike and hit my head on a fire hydrant and cried for 3 months straight. And it's like, you have a TBI? You didn't know that, did you? Right? So,
yeah. That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to take a quick little break. Remind our listeners to go ahead and click that like button, click that subscribe button, and if you're on YouTube, hit the notify button and just continue listening. And now, Jeff, I find that very interesting because, like, I agree with you. I like the way you asked that question, but for the clubhouse, we're a little different. And a lot of people, to me, just associate. They just think, like, stroke, TBI, but what people don't understand is we're all encompassed under the acquired brain injury.
Right.
So, that's when they first told me I had a brain injury. I'm like, I didn't have a brain injury. I didn't hit my head. I had a stroke. Well, but my brain was deprived of oxygen for X amount of time.
Right.
So therefore I have a brain injury. But it's, people get, brain tumor, whatever it is, we all fall under the umbrella of acquired brain injury. But TBI is the most recognizable, even though the general public still doesn't understand what brain injury is all about, traumatic or other. I agree. But so I like the way you ask that question, that how many times have you hit your head versus do you have a TBI? Because you're right, it is such a silent disease that a lot of people don't know about. I tell people all the time, and my listeners probably get tired of hearing this, in some ways I'm happy that I have a little bit of the physical disability, because then it's obvious there's something, something happened where people are, if I'm sitting there staring at the Cheerio box for 3 minutes in Target or whatever, they're going to go, well, yeah, something's wrong with her. Look at her, So it makes it a little easier. So, yeah.
Right.
But, so I do like that. So I know a lot of our questions, because I didn't know about your other practice, and I wish I did, because that we might have to have you back to talk more about that, or this one, I don't know, but we'll get all your information. But, so one of the questions you did say is, you started talking about, mental illness, and I think that's another big thing that I know a lot of people associate. They don't, that with a brain injury, that's not something that we think of at first, but we do in some ways end up with some of that mental illness issues because of the depression, because, our life has 100% flipped upside down and now it's different, which, people think hand in hand, mental depression or mental illness and TBI can go hand in hand, but what it sounds like, it's like mental illness, TBI, substance abuse can just be a deadly combination all around.
For sure. And I think what we're talking about is mental hygiene. Example, if I'm just going to talk, for every 100 patients that are diagnosed with depression that are put on an SSRI, if you were to dig deeper, how many of those people, I'm going to say what I want to say. How many of those people are going low because they failed to activate their life's purpose and they're in a cubicle in a bank somewhere like this? I wanted to be a sailboat captain. This is not who I'm supposed to be in this life. Or it's tied to divorce, or it's tied to something going on with their children. That's not an organic biochemical response that's needing a serotonin up boost. That's just something you're going through. Life is not meant to be joy and happy. Life is challenging. It's difficult. We have ups and downs. But in the West, we're so used to where's the pill to fix the way I feel? And things are over prescribed and not accommodating the cultural context of maybe you don't need an antidepressant. Maybe you need someone to talk to. Maybe you need a career counselor to help you get back on track where you're supposed to go. And so I'm if you let me talk too long, I'll start taking shots in the medical field, and I don't want to do that. But I've lived long enough to see sometimes people want easy answers and doctors want the same. Can we wrap this up in 15 minutes with a prescription pad and send you home? But people are complicated and they have thoughts and feelings and experiences that they don't know how to integrate always, and especially with brain injury people, it's a tough road to sled, and that's why I love this. People need community, they need support, they need understanding, and they need to get their motor skills and get their brain back as much as what their new ceiling can be, right? So.
Sure. And I'm just taking over.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. That's your next question.
I kind of going back and forth. So if I wanted you talked a little bit like you plan a 3-month treatment plan if I need you for a coach to help me. Like, I know maybe I do, maybe I don't know I've had a brain injury, but I want to get some ideas. What does that look like? I mean, how do you figure out that, yeah, I'm good to help you, or no, you're just lazy? I don't know. Maybe
well,
that's not the right word.
I have some criteria. Like I'm usually good for, a half-hour phone call of somebody that can call my 888 number, and I kind of determine that. I will say there is a tipping point in brain injury where, just to be honest, I've had some clients call me that were shot in the head with a high-powered rifle, and something like hyperbaric oxygen or bioavailable copper may not be. It may be, as they say, it is what it is. And so I'm pretty intuitive with people, but generally speaking, with closed head injuries with a low cognitive ceiling, sometimes you don't have to go very far to figure out people are eating frozen pizzas, their diet, sleep, and nutrition are in the trash, they've not seen an optometrist yet, they have these ocular motor headaches, and sometimes it's pretty easy to spot. Like, there's a lot we can do to get you feeling quite a bit better. Maybe not perfectly normal, but quite a bit better. So.
Yeah. So one of my questions is, now that you've seen a brain injury, had a brain injury, and kind of experienced it, and now that you studied more into medical field, like, how do you describe it as, or how do you feel as it between textbook and reality?
Let me see if I understand the question. Books will only get you so far because we're talking about people, not fictional characters in a book.
And every single brain injury is different. There's not a book that can tell you if you had this kind of brain injury, this is going to happen. If you've had a stroke, this is going to happen. There's no there's no books for those.
I had a client, I'll keep it short because I know we're running short on time. I had a client 2 years ago who had a stroke from injecting fentanyl into his brain, so substance abuse was definitely involved, and he came out of it with amnesia. And his medical summary said he had permanent brain damage, he would never recover. And I worked with him with memory-based interventions, and the actual injury, we just treated it like an injury with neurofeedback and hyperbaric oxygen, and he's back in college now, and that was 2 years ago. So people, and textbooks had nothing to do with that. It was just feeling into it and using common sense to write a treatment plan.
Sure. No, that's awesome. So I'm going to ask you one last question.
Sure.
So what would be like one of your maybe sayings that you have in your practice, or one of your biggest piece of advice for someone that knows or thinks they might have a brain injury, to keep them going and to encourage them to reach out for that support that they might need, wherever that may come from?
Yeah, I would say get involved in community with understanding people. Sometimes you're at a place where you or your family's going to have to do your own homework. There's some mid-range stuff. If you don't do a deep enough dive on Google, you're going to land in pharmacology. If you dive too deep on Google, you're going to end up with chemtrails, and 5G gives you cancer, but there's some good middle range. Like I said, I'm big into hyperbaric oxygen, neurofeedback. These would be considered integrative off-label medicines, that they're not what you find in a doctor's office, but these things are out there. I actually office at Johnson Medical Associates up the street, and we do all of those things. So.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, this has been really interesting and, like I said, way more than I was expecting. I was looking at one thing and we kind of went another direction, which is totally fine and perfect. I love it. Like I said, we may have to have you back because I've got lots more questions now. But I will make sure that we have all your both websites. I have the Labor of Love one. We'll get your TBI coaching, and we'll make sure those are in the description as well. But thank you again so much for taking time out to be with us today.
Absolutely. It was lovely to be here with you ladies. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our listeners for listening.
Thank you. And then if you want to reach us, you can also email us at bindwaves@thebind.org and follow us on Instagram at bindwaves, and then visit our website, thebind.org/bindwaves.
And again, don't forget to click all the buttons. Like, share, subscribe, notify. Just make sure they're all positive buttons. But go ahead and click those so that you can continue to follow us every week.
Yep. Don't forget you can find our podcast on all listening platforms.
So until next time.
Until next time.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bind Waves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.